The afternoon sun stretched across the wide Texas land, turning the grass golden and soft. Dust rose gently behind the wagon rolling toward the ranch, and inside that wagon sat a young woman who kept her hands tightly folded in her lap. Her name was Mara, a widow barely in her mid-20s, but her height and strong build often made her look older. People called her a giant woman, not to tease her, but because she stood taller and stronger than most men. Yet behind that height was a heart that carried too many fears. She stared at the road ahead, unsure of what life would bring next. She had lost her husband a year ago in a harsh winter accident, and since then she had lived alone at the edge of town, doing small sewing jobs and selling herbs she gathered. But loneliness had begun to crush her, and her small cabin no longer felt safe. A neighbor finally suggested she work at a nearby ranch owned by a respected and wealthy rancher named Reed Hartley. Reed had offered her work after hearing how hard-working she was. He had also said she could stay in a small guest house on his land if she wished. Mara accepted the offer because she needed a new beginning. Still, the thought of living on someone else's land frightened her. She had always hidden her size, making herself smaller, quieter, softer, hoping no one would judge her or feel intimidated. As the wagon slowed to a stop near the ranch's main gate, Mara took a deep breath. The ranch stretched far, with rolling fields, neat fences, and strong horses running in the distance. The place looked peaceful, but her hands trembled anyway. Reed Hartley walked toward the wagon with calm steps. He was a tall man himself, though still shorter than Mara. His dark hair moved with the warm breeze, and his deep brown eyes showed kindness instead of fear. Most people looked at Mara with either surprise or uncertainty, but Reed studied her with respect. He had heard many stories about her strength, her hard work, and her courage during the winter her husband died. He had also heard that she avoided people because she feared being too much for them. "Welcome, Mara," Reed said softly, offering his hand. She hesitated before placing her large, rough hand into his. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't show any sign of fear. Instead, he smiled with warmth. "You're safe here," he said. Those words steadied her a little. Mara stepped down from the wagon, standing tall and unsure of where to look. Reed led her toward the guest house, a small but clean place with a porch and a little window facing the fields. "I hope this feels like a good place for you," Reed said as he opened the door. "If anything makes you uncomfortable, tell me. You don't have to carry everything alone." Mara lowered her eyes and nodded. She had spent so many months hiding her grief and her fears that simple kindness felt almost strange. She entered the guest house. The inside was simple. Wooden floors, a bed, a small table, a shelf, and a window letting in warm sunlight. It felt safe. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Reed watched her quietly, understanding without words that she needed time. "Take a moment to settle in," he said gently. "When you're ready, I'll show you around the ranch." When he left, Mara placed her small bag on the table and sat on the edge of the bed. She stared at her hands, remembering how her husband used to laugh and say she could carry 2 sacks of grain while other women struggled with one. She missed him, but she also felt guilty. Guilty for surviving, guilty for moving on, guilty for being so strong yet feeling so weak inside. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I hope I can do this. I really hope so." After some time, she stepped outside, feeling the sun warm her face. Reed waited by the fence with 2 horses grazing nearby. He pointed toward the wide land. "This is where the cattle roam during the cooler months. The barn is over there. We have a few workers, but some jobs need steady, strong hands. That's why I asked you to come." Mara swallowed hard. "I don't want to break anything," she said, almost ashamed. Reed looked at her with honest confusion. "Break anything?" She nodded nervously. "Sometimes. I try to help, but my strength is too much. People don't always like it." Reed leaned slightly closer, speaking gently. Strength is not something to fear. You just need to trust it. Mara didn't answer. Trusting herself was something she had lost long ago. He led her to the barn, showing her the feed storage, the tools, and the fenced area where the horses were trained. Every time Mara bent to lift something, she paused, as if asking the world for permission. She moved carefully, slowly, testing herself. Reed noticed her hesitation, but didn't rush her. When she lifted a heavy wooden crate, Reed watched with interest. Most men struggled with it, but Mara lifted it easily, though cautiously. "You can put it there," Reed said. She gently placed it down, almost too softly. "You don't have to treat everything like it's fragile," Reed said with a small smile. "This ranch is built strong." Mara's cheeks warmed. She didn't know if she was embarrassed or grateful. As the day went on, Reed continued showing her how the ranch worked. Mara listened carefully, wanting to do everything right. Her husband had always handled the heavy work, and she had helped only when needed. Now she felt unsure of what she could or could not do. When they reached a narrow gate between two fences, Mara froze. It was small, much smaller than she expected. She hesitated, looking at Reed. I don't think I'll fit," she whispered. Reed stepped closer and inspected the gate. "You'll fit," he said calmly. "Just take it slow." She looked uncertain. "I'm too big." Reed's voice stayed soft, steady. "It's safe. Trust me." The way he said those words, calm, kind, without any judgment, made something inside her loosen. She stepped toward the gate again. She took a slow breath, then another. Reed placed his hand gently on the wooden post, not touching her, just reassuring with his presence. "You're not too big," he said. "You're just afraid because people made you feel that way." Mara's throat tightened. She had heard cruel jokes before, had been teased for her height as a girl, had watched people whisper. Even adults sometimes acted uncomfortable around her. But Reed's voice held no fear. With a steady breath, she began to move through the gate. Her shoulders passed, then her waist, then the rest of her body. She didn't get stuck, didn't struggle. She stood on the other side, almost surprised. Reed smiled. "See? You fit just fine." Mara let out a small laugh, soft and rare. I didn't think I could." "You can do more than you think," Reed replied warmly. "You just need someone to remind you." A quiet moment passed between them. Mara stood with the sun warming her back, realizing she hadn't laughed in a long time. Reed watched her with a gentle expression, noticing the strength in her but also the sadness she tried to hide. As evening approached, Reed walked her back to the guest house. The sky was painted in soft pink and orange hues. Birds flew across the fading light, and the cool breeze carried the scent of hay and fresh grass. "You did well today," Reed said softly. "Tomorrow will be easier." Mara nodded, her voice quiet. "Thank you for being patient." Reed looked at her with sincerity. "I'm not patient. I just see your worth, even if you don't yet." She felt a flutter of warmth, something she hadn't felt in months. She wasn't sure what it meant, but it made her feel lighter. When Reed stepped away, he glanced back once more. "If you need anything, just call. You're not alone here." Mara entered the guest house and sat on the bed again. This time she didn't feel scared. She remembered Reed's voice, the kindness in his eyes, the way he said, "It's safe. Trust me." For the first time in a long while, she believed someone. Outside, Reed walked back toward the barn, thinking about the tall, gentle widow who tried so hard to hide her fears. He had seen strength before, but her strength was different. Quiet, shy, and wrapped in loneliness. He hoped she would stay long enough to rediscover her own courage. Mara lay down slowly, letting her body relax. She closed her eyes and whispered into the quiet room. Maybe Maybe I really can start again. And for the first night in many months, she slept peacefully, knowing someone finally understood her. Not as a giant woman, not as a widow, but as a person trying to find her place again. The next morning began with a soft chill in the air. A thin layer of mist covered the fields, and the horses stood quietly near the fences, their warm breaths visible in the early light. Mara woke before sunrise, her body still adjusting to a new place and a new routine. She sat up slowly, letting her feet touch the wooden floor, and for a moment she simply listened to the calm outside. The guest house felt peaceful, and for the first time in many months, she didn't feel the urge to hide from the world. She washed her face with cool water, braided her long hair, and stepped outside. The air smelled fresh, and the sky glowed with faint orange. She spotted Reed near the barn, already working. He moved with steady confidence, checking the saddles, brushing one of the horses, and preparing for the day ahead. When he noticed her walking toward him, he smiled in a warm, familiar way, as if he had been expecting her. "You're early," he said. "So are you," Mara replied softly. He laughed lightly. "Ranch work starts before the sun. You'll get used to it." She wasn't sure, but she wanted to try. Reed handed her a small bucket filled with feed. "Let's start simple today. I'll show you how we feed the younger horses." Mara took the bucket carefully, moving slowly to avoid any sudden movements. She lowered herself to offer the feed, and the horses approached her without fear. One of them, a young chestnut colt, nudged her arm gently. She hesitated, unsure if she should touch him. "It's all right," Reed encouraged. "He likes you." Mara lifted her hand and let the colt sniff her fingers. He pressed his warm nose against her palm, and she felt something gentle stir inside her. Animals had always been easier for her to understand than people. As they walked along the fence line, Reed explained the routines: feeding, watering, cleaning, watching for injuries. Mara listened carefully, nodding, wanting to learn everything. She carried the bucket on her hip with ease, but again she moved cautiously, as if afraid to show too much strength. Reed noticed. "You don't have to hold back. These buckets won't break." She looked down at her hands. "I just don't want to scare anyone." Reed walked beside her, speaking in a steady voice. "Mara, no one here is afraid of you. Not me, not the horses, not the workers. You belong here just like anyone else." She didn't respond immediately, but his words stayed with her like a quiet comfort. After the feeding was done, Reed brought her to a shaded area near the corral. A stack of wooden boards lay on the ground, some cracked and worn. "We need to replace a few fences," he said. "I plan to do it slowly, piece by piece, but with your strength, we might finish sooner." She bit her lower lip, unsure. "I'll try." Reed picked up a hammer and a small bucket of nails. Mara lifted one of the boards effortlessly, holding it steady while Reed lined it up. As he hammered, he glanced at her arms, strong, steady, reliable. She didn't seem to notice his admiration. When they moved to the next panel, Reed paused. "This one is heavier. Want me to help?" Mara tested the weight and shook her head. "I can manage." She lifted the board, surprising even herself, and set it in place. Reed hammered the nails in, impressed by how smoothly she worked. With every board she carried, Mara slowly realized something. She wasn't breaking anything. She wasn't too much. She was useful. After several panels were done, Mara wiped her forehead. The cool morning had warmed into a gentle sun. She felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired. Reed leaned against the fence, watching her. "You're doing well." She looked away shyly. "Thank you." A moment passed before Reed said, "I'm glad you came here, Mara." She opened her mouth but wasn't sure how to answer. The truth was, she was glad too, but admitting it felt vulnerable. Before either of them could speak again, a horse's loud whinny broke the quiet. They turned to see a young mare kicking at a loose rope tangled around her leg. She was frightened, jumping around wildly. "Stay back!" Reed said quickly. But Mara didn't step back. Instead, she took a step closer. "Let me try," she said. Reed hesitated. "She's scared. She could kick—" "I know horses," Mara said gently. "Let me try." Reed nodded, trusting her. Mara approached the mare slowly, her movements calm and steady. She spoke softly, using a gentle tone she rarely used with people. The mare snorted and tossed her head, but Mara didn't flinch. She moved closer, one step at a time, keeping her hands open and relaxed. When she reached the mare, she placed a hand on its neck, smoothing the trembling muscles. The mare's breathing slowed. Mara bent carefully and untangled the rope from the leg, working patiently until it came free. "You're all right," she whispered to the horse. Reed watched with quiet admiration. He had seen skilled ranch hands calm frightened animals before, but Mara had something different, an instinctive connection. When Mara stepped away, the mare lowered her head and breathed softly, as if thanking her. Reed walked over. "That was impressive." Mara shook her head. "Anyone could have done it." "No," Reed said firmly. "Not everyone. You have a way with animals." Her cheeks warmed again. She wasn't used to praise that felt genuine. They continued working through the day, fixing fences, cleaning stalls, organizing the feed storage. Mara worked harder than she had in months, and strangely, she felt lighter. Doing real work made her feel useful, and having Reed nearby made her feel steady. He never rushed her, never made her feel small or too big, never looked at her with judgment. He simply saw her. Later that afternoon, Reed suggested they take a break near the pond at the edge of the property. The water shimmered in the sunlight, and the breeze carried a soft scent from the wildflowers growing along the bank. Reed sat on a smooth rock, and Mara sat a little distance away, unsure if she should sit closer. "You don't have to sit so far," Reed said with a light laugh. "You're part of this ranch now." She inched a little closer, but still kept some space between them. Reed skipped a small stone across the surface of the pond. "How long were you alone before coming here?" Mara looked at her hands. "Almost a year." "That must have been hard." "It was quiet," she said softly. "Too quiet." Reed nodded. "You're safe here. You don't need to feel alone anymore." Mara swallowed the rising emotion. "It's still strange, being around people again. I feel like I'm always in the way, or too loud or too strong." "You're none of those things," Reed said. "You're careful, you're thoughtful, and you're stronger than you understand." She let his words sink in. No one had ever described her like that before. A sudden gust of wind brushed past them, carrying small leaves across the water. Mara wrapped her arms around herself, remembering all the times people had teased her in town, how boys had laughed when she ducked through doorways, how women whispered about her being too tall, too broad, too different. Reed noticed the distant look in her eyes. "What are you thinking about?" She hesitated. "People don't always understand me." "Then they're missing something important," Reed replied. "You're not someone people forget. You're someone people notice." Mara almost laughed. "That's the problem. They notice too much." Reed shook his head. "Maybe one day you'll see yourself the way I do." She looked at him for a long moment. There was no teasing in his eyes, only sincerity. It startled her how deeply his kindness reached. As the day neared its end, Reed walked her back to the guest house. The sky turned pink and gold again, just like the evening before. They stood near the small steps leading to her door. "You worked hard today," Reed said softly. "Rest well. Tomorrow we'll try something new." Mara nodded, her voice quiet. "Thank you. For everything." Reed paused, then said in a gentle tone, "You don't have to be afraid of your strength, Mara. Not here." She looked down, touched by his words. "I'm trying." He gave her a warm smile. "That's enough." When Reed walked away, Mara stood at the doorway for a long moment, watching his figure fade into the warm glow of the ranch. Something inside her shifted quietly. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she knew one thing. She wasn't as alone as she once believed. Inside her small house, she lay down, tired but peaceful. She whispered into the quiet, "Maybe tomorrow I'll be braver." Outside, the ranch settled into night, and Reed, still thinking about the tall, gentle widow, felt a growing sense of hope that she would stay long enough to see her own worth. The third morning on the ranch began with soft golden light spreading across the fields. Birds sang from the fence posts, and a warm breeze rolled gently across the land. Mara stepped out of the guest house feeling more rested than she had in months. The early sun warmed her face, and she breathed deeply, letting the fresh country air calm her. Something in her heart felt different, quiet, steady, almost hopeful. When she reached the barn, she saw Reed already working, brushing one of the older horses with slow, careful movements. He looked up the moment he heard her footsteps, and a small smile formed on his face. His expression made her feel strangely grounded, as if she had finally found a place where she belonged. "You're getting good at waking early," Reed said lightly. Mara smiled back. "I didn't want to waste the morning." "You won't," Reed said. "I have something new to show you today." She followed him as he led her to the open training pen behind the barn. Inside the pen was a young horse, tall, strong, and restless. The horse paced back and forth, tossing its head. Mara hesitated. "He looks nervous." "He is," Reed said, "but he's not dangerous. He just needs someone patient." She looked at Reed with slight confusion. "Why me?" "Because you're calm," Reed said simply, "and horses trust calm people." Mara didn't think she was calm. She was full of doubt and worries most days, but she didn't argue. Reed opened the gate and walked inside first, moving slowly to show the horse he meant no harm. Mara followed him, her steps steady but cautious. The young horse snorted softly, watching her. Mara lowered her hand and let him smell her fingers. After a moment, he moved closer, pressing his nose lightly against her palm. Reed nodded. "See? He likes your presence." Mara stroked the horse's neck, her touch gentle. She didn't speak, but Reed could see how naturally she connected with the animal. There was something peaceful about the way she handled creatures. No fear, no impatience, only quiet understanding. They spent the next hour helping the young horse grow comfortable with simple commands. Reed demonstrated and Mara repeated his movements. She learned quickly, and the horse responded to her more smoothly than Reed expected. "You're good at this," he said. Mara shook her head. "I just listened to him." "That's why you're good," Reed said. Mara lowered her eyes, embarrassed but pleased. As they left the pen, Reed walked beside her with easy steps. "Mara," he said quietly, "you don't give yourself enough credit." She sighed. "I don't know how to see myself the way you do." "That's all right," Reed said gently. "One day you will." Mara didn't have an answer, but his words warmed something deep in her chest. By midday, they took a break near the big oak tree at the edge of the property. Reed brought 2 cups of cold lemonade from the house, handing one to her. Mara took a careful sip, letting the coolness calm her after the long morning. Reed sat in the shade beside her, not too close, not too far, just close enough to show he enjoyed her company. "You're settling in well," he said. "Maybe," Mara said softly. "I still feel unsure sometimes." Reed watched her thoughtfully. "Everyone feels unsure when life changes. What matters is that you keep trying." Mara looked at her hands. "I'm afraid to make mistakes." "Mistakes don't make you weak," Reed said. "They help you grow." She nodded slowly. His steady voice always made things feel less frightening. When they returned to work, Reed suggested something unexpected. "Come with me to town later. We need supplies, and I want you to choose a few things for your house." Mara stiffened. The thought of going into town, where people stared at her height, whispered behind her back, judged her presence, made her stomach tighten. "I don't know," she said. Reed noticed her discomfort immediately. "We don't have to go if you're not ready." Mara shook her head gently. "No. I should try." He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Then we'll go together. You won't be alone." Those words settled her fear, just enough for her to agree. Later in the afternoon, after finishing their chores, they rode into town in Reed's wagon. The streets were busier than usual, with children running around and shopkeepers calling out greetings to customers. Mara sat stiffly, her hands pressed against her knees, trying not to look nervous. When they reached the supply store, Reed jumped down first and offered his hand to help her off the wagon. She hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. His grip was steady and kind. As they entered the shop, Mara felt the familiar sting of eyes turning toward her. A couple of women whispered softly, and a man glanced twice at her height. Mara lowered her gaze, wishing she could disappear. Reed noticed her discomfort and stepped slightly closer. Not in a protective way, but in a supportive way. "You're doing fine," he whispered softly. Mara nodded, but her breath felt tight. They gathered supplies, rope, feed bags, small tools, and household items. As Reed discussed prices with the shopkeeper, Mara wandered to the corner of the store where sewing materials were displayed. She touched a soft piece of fabric, remembering how she used to sew clothes for her late husband. Reed joined her quietly. "Do you like that color?" he asked. Mara nodded. "It's gentle." "Pick a few," Reed said. "You should have things that make your home feel warm." She hesitated. "I don't want to take too much." "Mara," Reed said softly, "you're part of this ranch now. It's all right to choose what you need." His words reminded her again that she didn't have to hide. Slowly, she picked 2 small bundles of cloth, adding them to the basket. On their way back to the ranch, the setting sun filled the sky with deep orange light. Mara relaxed a little, feeling safer now that they were away from the town's busy noise. "You did well today," Reed said as the horses trotted along the road. "I was scared," she admitted. "But you still did it," Reed replied. "That's courage." Mara looked at him, surprised. "Courage?" "Yes," Reed said with a soft smile. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about moving forward even when you're afraid." His voice carried warmth, and she felt something steady growing inside her. When they reached the ranch, Reed helped her unload the supplies. As they worked side by side, Mara felt a quiet connection forming, one built not on loud moments but on simple trust, shared work, and kindness. After putting the supplies away, Reed walked her to her guest house. The evening air was cool, and the stars were just beginning to appear. "Thank you for today," Mara said softly. "You don't need to thank me," Reed replied. "I enjoy your company." She looked down shyly. "I don't understand why." Reed took a slow breath. "Because you're gentle, because you're strong, because you're honest, and because you're trying to heal." Mara's eyes softened, and her voice trembled slightly. "I don't feel strong." Reed stepped a little closer, not too close, just enough for his words to reach her clearly. "Strength isn't only in the body, Mara, it's also in the heart. Anyone can carry weight, but not everyone can survive loss the way you did." Mara felt her breath catch. She had never heard someone describe her like that. "You're stronger than you think," Reed said quietly. Mara swallowed, touched deeply. "I'm trying to believe that," Reed smiled gently. "You will, one day." A soft silence settled around them. The crickets sang and the wind rustled the grass. Mara stood with her hands folded, unsure what to say next. But Reed didn't rush her. He simply stood there with her, giving her the space to feel her own emotions. After a long moment, Mara said softly, "Good night, Reed." "Good night, Mara," he replied. She entered her small home, and Reed watched the door close before turning away. As he walked back toward the barn, his thoughts lingered on her kindness, her quiet courage, her hidden strength. He admired her more each day, though he didn't say it aloud. Inside the guest house, Mara sat on the bed holding one of the fabric bundles she had chosen. She felt the soft material between her fingers and thought about all the small moments of the day, calming the young horse, walking through town without running away, listening to Reed's steady voice. She whispered to herself, "I'm getting stronger, even if I don't see it yet." For the first time in a long while, she believed her life could change. She believed she could change, and she believed that Reed Hartley, with his calm voice and gentle eyes, might be the reason she finally found courage again. The next few days on the ranch settled into a gentle rhythm that felt comforting to Mara. She woke early each morning, worked through the cool hours of the day, learned new tasks, and ended every evening with a sense of honest tiredness rather than loneliness. Reed was always nearby, not hovering, not watching her closely, but supporting her with steady presence. He guided her when she needed guidance, stepped back when she needed space, and spoke with calm respect, rather than the judgment she had encountered most of her life. By the fourth week, Mara felt something she had forgotten how to feel. She felt at home. One warm afternoon, Reed asked her to help with a project near the back pasture where the grass grew taller. A large fallen tree, old and dry, lay across one of the smaller paths the cattle sometimes used. Reed had planned to remove it for weeks, but hadn't had the time or help. When they reached the heavy trunk, Reed tried lifting one end with a lever, but it barely budged. "This one's been waiting for you," Reed said with a playful smile. Mara stared at the huge tree, unsure. "I don't think I can move that." Reed wiped the sweat from his brow. "You won't know until you try." She hesitated, afraid of failing, but she stepped closer, placing her hands on the rough bark. The tree was heavy, far heavier than anything she had ever lifted before. She braced her feet, took a deep breath, and pulled upward. The trunk shifted, not much, but enough. Reed's eyes widened a little with surprise, though he hid it quickly. "You see," he said softly, "you're stronger than you think." Mara adjusted her grip and lifted again, this time with more confidence. Slowly, inch by inch, she raised the trunk high enough for Reed to place support boards under it. Together, they slid the heavy log to the side of the path until it finally rolled into the grass. Mara stepped back, breathless but proud. "I didn't think I could do it." Reed smiled warmly. "That's the thing about doubt, it lies. You proved it wrong today." She lowered her head, shy but happy. Every time Reed believed in her, she felt herself grow a little taller inside, not just outside. They walked back toward the main ranch, the soft crunch of dried grass beneath their boots. Reed glanced at her as they walked. "Mara, I need to tell you something." Her heart tightened. She wasn't sure what to expect. Reed continued carefully. "The ranch hands have mentioned how much they appreciate your help. The animals are calmer with you around. The fences are stronger, and the place feels better." Mara blinked in surprise. "I didn't know they noticed." "They notice," Reed said. "Everyone notices. In a good way." She felt her throat tighten. She had always expected people to see her size first, her flaws second, and her worth last. But here, she was valued before being judged. As they reached the shade of the barn, Reed paused. There's another thing. Mara looked at him unsure. Reed took a slow breath. A few days ago, I realized something about myself. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I enjoy working with you. I trust you. And I admire you. Mara's heart thumped hard in her chest. She didn't know what to say. Her hands trembled at her sides. Reed noticed her silence and softened his voice. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted to be honest. You deserve honesty. Mara struggled to find words. I don't understand why you admire me. Reed stepped a little closer, not enough to frighten her, but close enough that his sincerity reached her clearly. Because you're brave, not loud brave, quiet brave. You carry your pain with strength. You face the world even when it scares you, and you treat every living thing with gentleness. Mara swallowed thickly. She had never heard anyone describe her that way. She had never thought anyone could see her heart beneath her sighs and fears. I'm just trying my best, she whispered. That's what I admire, Reed said softly. A warm breeze swept through the barn, lifting dust and hay into small swirls. The peaceful sound of horses shifting in their stalls filled the silence. Reed took one step back, giving her space again. We don't have to talk more about it now, he said. Just know that I'm here. Mara nodded slowly, unsure of what she felt. Fear, hope, gratitude, confusion, all tangled inside her. She spent the rest of the afternoon working quietly, her thoughts full but not heavy. She helped wash the horses, refilled water troughs, and carried new feed sacks into storage. Reed occasionally glanced her way, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed, but he didn't push her. He let her think. Close to sunset, Reed found her near the small pond where they had shared lemonade before. She was sitting on a rock, staring at the water and hugging her knees gently. Mind if I sit? Reed asked. She shook her head and he took a seat beside her, watching the surface of the pond shimmer under the fading sun. After a long silence, Mara spoke first. I was afraid of you when I came here. Reed turned to her, surprised. Afraid of me? Not you exactly, Mara said. Afraid of someone seeing me, really seeing me. I thought, if anyone looked too close, they'd think I didn't belong. Reed listened carefully, letting her continue. I thought I was too big, too strong, too different, she whispered. I thought I didn't deserve a place like this. Reed's voice came soft and steady. You deserve more than you know, Mara. She blinked away sudden tears. It's hard to believe that. You're learning, Reed said gently, piece by piece. Mara stared at the ripples on the pond. I don't know what you see in me. Reed shook his head slowly. I see someone who survived pain, someone who works hard, someone who tries every day to be better, someone who doesn't realize how kind she is. That's what I see. She looked at him, her eyes warm but unsure. I'm scared, she admitted. I know, Reed said, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to try anyway. Mara let his words sink in. She drew in a long breath and exhaled shakily. Do you think I can change? Truly change? Reed smiled. You already have. The moment grew quiet as the sun dipped lower behind the hills. Shadows softened, and the world felt calm. Finally, Mara asked, Why did you choose to help me? Why offer me a place here? Reed answered without hesitation. Because I saw a woman carrying too much alone, and because something inside me wanted to give you a safe place to breathe. Mara felt a warm ache inside her chest, an ache that came when hope began to overpower fear. Reed, she whispered, I don't know what the future will be, but I want to keep trying, here, with you. Reed's eyes softened. That's all I ask. They sat quietly as the sky darkened, saying nothing more. Words were unnecessary. The simple silence between them felt warm and full, like a promise of better days. When they finally stood, Reed walked her back to the guest house. Before she stepped inside, he said softly, "You're not alone, Mara. Not anymore." Mara turned toward him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and calm strength. "Thank you, Reed, for everything." He gave her a gentle smile. "Good night." "Good night," she replied. As he walked away, Mara watched him, feeling something new inside her, something brave, something steady. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment, letting the truth settle. She was no longer hiding from the world. She was growing, healing, belonging. And as she lay down in her warm bed, Mara realized the most important truth of all. She wasn't afraid of her strength anymore. She wasn't afraid of tomorrow, because someone had shown her she was enough, more than enough. Outside, under the wide Texas sky, Reed headed back to the barn with a quiet hope in his heart, too. He knew the future was uncertain, but he also knew something had changed, not just in Mara, but in him as well. And for the first time in a long while, both of them were ready to face whatever life brought next, together.